Hello again and thanks for joining. Today we've got an old Fleischmann diesel locomotive to have a look at. It's number 4272 and it's quite a beast of a locomotive, this one. It's another second-hand purchase. This box isn't looking too good. It's got a couple of rips in it, some shelf wear, and the plastic is coming apart. So this box has been around for a while. Hopefully the model will be okay. So let's get it open and we'll have a look. Well, here is the model out of the packaging and it is a really impressive model. It's very heavy and it's certainly got a lot of presence. Let's have a closer look at this model. So as I pick this up, I can really feel the weight of this locomotive. I think it may actually all be made of metal. And as we start off at this end of the locomotive, it's got this really nice rounded part here. And these windows are really nicely curved. It's quite a characterful locomotive, this one. You can see the number 5202 and these lovely yellow lines and the yellow line along the bottom there. These look to be maybe painted on because I can see a bit of a blob here that isn't so good just on the corner of the cab there. And it also looks as though there's some damage here on the paintwork. It's very dull here compared to the rest of the locomotive. However, that said, I actually think this may have been repainted in the past. I'm not quite sure. The windows really aren't flush fit at all and the glazing is quite poor as well. You can barely see through it as well. It does have some windscreen wipers moulded into it as well, but they're not picked out in any colour. And then as we start to move down the length of this diesel locomotive, there's another window here and a door with the glazing. But again, there's quite a lot of depth between the body and the plastic, so it doesn't look very realistic at all there. But we do have these wire metal handrails that have been added in here, which is a nice touch. The yellow bar you can see goes miles away from this as well, so it hasn't been applied that well. We've got a random screw here as well. I'm not quite sure what that's for. And then we've got some rivet detail and these ribs that run the length of the rest of the locomotive. The number here, 5202, has been applied really nicely over the top of this rib. And we have another window here. This time the window glazing isn't as bad as the cab, but you still can't see inside. And we've got some grills here, which are actually quite nicely done. There's quite a lot of depth to them. And they could also be enhanced just with a little bit of black ink perhaps. Further down the length of this locomotive you have this hatch in the middle with this symbol here, and then as we go further down there's not a lot of differences here. We've got another screw here and these wire handrails as well, and then we have some transfers here. It says Latour. I'm guessing maybe this is Belgium. You can see here this bogie is moving an awful lot. It's quite comical actually. At this end of the locomotive it's identical to the first. I guess these are illuminated 3 lamps here. Looking at the top of the locomotive, it's been painted black onto the green and that's been done very well. These hatches have got some really defined rivet detail on them. And then we have these grills in the middle with the exhausts. And these are actually really nice mouldings. They're much better than on the side of the locomotive. So looking at the bogies here, they do move an awful lot like I've mentioned, and there's a massive gap between them and the body. You can see that there. You have this metal part on the front here which matches up with the body in terms of its profile, and we have some representation of pipework here and the buffers moulded in as well. The coupling here is a typical Fleischmann one which does have some articulation, but it can't be swapped for anything other than this because it's not in an M pocket or anything like that. And the rest of the bogie has got plastic sides here and a metal underframe, and again this moves as well separate to the bogie, so there's an awful lot of movement on here. This seems to be the pickup bogie and power goes to the one at the back where you can see the gearbox here. And it also has traction tyres on the 2 outer wheels and the inner wheels are driven but without any traction tyres. I don't think it needs traction tyres, it's so heavy it probably can pull everything that you've got. This looks as though it is possibly missing a plate that goes across here because it's got an exposed wire here. And in the middle we've got the fuel tank which is gloss on the outside and then matte underneath here, and a little bit of detail here and a couple of steps which don't match up with the door. Anyway, it looks like a screw here. I think we should take this apart and have a look at the mechanism. So the screws seem to just hold this weight in the middle and that was it. So it does look as though these screws here actually hold the bogies in. So this one is the driven one. So I'm going to undo these screws and we'll have a look at what this bogie has got on it. So first of all, you can see here that it has indeed got a light bulb here, which is illuminating the 3 lights at the front, and it has the wire running to a little bit of a circuit board just underneath the back bogie here. You can see it on the roof of the locomotive there. And then it runs power to the lights at the other end of the locomotive. So possibly what that is doing is just making it directional. I'm going to have to be very careful here because I don't want the wires to come off this, but you can see the motor here. It's very similar to the Hornby Ringfield motors and it has this additional weight on here. And on the back here you can see the gearbox. So it does feel a bit stiff when I'm doing this, but as I do it a little bit more, it becomes a bit more freer up. So possibly just the oil has been gunked up a little bit. So moving this around is going to help it when we put it on the test track and give it a run. So let's put this back together and we'll see how it performs. Okay, that was a bit of a faff getting that back together, but I've managed to get the bogie back on and the screws tightened up. I also put this part back on the right way around. It seemed to be back to front, so this has obviously been taken apart in the past by somebody else. But now the steps line up with the door, which is great, and you can also see this part here a bit more. Anyway, now that we've got this back together, maybe we should give it a run, so I'll put it on the test track. Okay, I've got it here on the test track and I've wired up my H&M controller. Let's give it some power and see what happens. Okay, that's not looking too good, and we've got some smoke coming out of it as well, so I'm going to have to take this apart and have a look and see what's happening. So here we are with the model apart again. My theory on this is it's probably just gunked up with oil over time, so I've already given it a bit of a clean and I'm going to give it some power and just see what happens. So I can't seem to get anything other than smoke coming out of this model. I'm wondering whether it's gunked up inside and it's just not able to turn over. So I'm going to try and open up some more parts and give it more of a clean. Okay, I've taken this apart a bit more, and one thing's for sure, it is absolutely caked in oil, as you can see in the mess on this kitchen roll. But now with the motor here, it seems to revolve not too bad, so I'm actually going to just put some power onto this and see if that has solved it. Well, it certainly looks quite impressive. I think it's just burning off oil or something. I'm just going to open up this part here and see if there's any mess inside here. I'm going to let it cool down though, because it seems to be on fire most of the time. So here we have the motor open up now, and yes indeed it is absolutely caked in dirt, and I think that's just old oil. And there's also oil all the way around here as well, and on the back of the base plate here as well. So I'm going to do a bit of a clean up and we'll see if we can get this working properly. Okay, I've given that a clean now. I'm just going to give it some power. So that's working much better, but I did notice that if I connect here, we've lost connection here, and also this part has come away from the top. So I'm going to have to do some soldering on this side of the motor now to get all this back together, but at least this is working okay now. Okay, we're all soldered up now. Let's give it another try. Great, so it's looking much better. So now it's time to get this back together. Okay, we're all back together now and it's back on the test track as well. I'm going to give it some power. Fingers crossed it won't go up in smoke again. Well, I'm pretty happy with that. This model runs really good now. A little bit noisy, but you'd kind of expect that from an older model, but it's very smooth and it can run at a really slow speed as well. And also an added bonus is that the lights work as well. So I think there's a lesson to be learned here. When you're servicing your models, be sure not to use too much oil or you might run into some serious problems like what we had with this one. But now that it's all clean and with just a tiny little bit of oil on the gears, it works absolutely perfectly. Anyway, I think it's time we find out how much this model weighs. So this model weighs 562 grams. So we've had some fun with this Fleischmann diesel locomotive today. I really like old vintage stuff and this one was very appealing straight away. It looks like such a beast of a diesel locomotive that it would take absolutely no prisoners on the track. I was initially a bit worried when we saw all that smoke and sparks when we began with this model, but it just needed a bit of a clean and a service, and it turned out to be a really good runner as well. There's obviously some limitations of this model. The glazing isn't good, and some of the paintwork, especially on the yellow, is a bit blotchy in places. and the moulding seems to be a bit crude as well, but it is made all of metal and it's quite a heavy locomotive, as you just saw there on the scales. It's certainly very characterful. So would I recommend something like this to you? It really depends. If you're a fan of vintage model railway stuff like I am, then this would be a really good addition. I think it would be very reliable if it's serviced correctly, and it's certainly very robust and can take a few knocks. If you're looking for the absolute best in detail and features, I don't think this locomotive is for you. However, if you do buy this one, I think it will do sterling service on your layout and will continue on for many years to come. So let me know what you thought about my analysis of this model and my repairs in the comments below. I'd really love to know what you think. And if you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. It really helps this channel grow. I'll put this on the turntable so you can see all the way around. I'm off now to clean my hands. They're absolutely covered in oil. But that's it for today. Thanks for watching. See ya.